Hey everyone, this is Daniel, and today I'm taking a break on my blogs for technology, and instead I want to talk something about me, especially my true story from epilepsy to MVP. So things I always talk in my life is I break it down into chapters. So in this moment, I actually want to talk about all the four chapters in my life. When I was born and had seizures, I had a new beginning. I got married and found a cure, and I became an MVP. So chapter one, which was born and found seizures. So, make no mistake, when I was born as a normal child. In fact, I had a normal delivery and I had all the other, everyday challenges that babies do. In fact, if you see in this picture, I was very curious about a tail or lack thereof of a puppy right next to me. And that was just me being a child. However, at the age of 3, everything changed. You see, one day I felt an aura. And an aura is a term that people use to describe the warnings of epilepsy that they're going to get a seizure. Aura is, in fact, a focal awareness of seizures. And since I was 3, I was scared, I was afraid. And that first day, I had what's a grand mal seizure. And a grand mal seizure is what causes loss of consciousness, violent muscle contraction, sometimes foam comes out of your mouth. But moving forward, all I had was actually complex partial seizures over there. So let's talk a little bit about that. My seizures were always in the temporal lobe, and I'll show you a picture of that. What it did is it disrupted speech, and it caused some kind of automated or repetitive movements in my mouth, which for me was like chewing. Another thing which happened was it altered my consciousness. I would stare blankly at a distance. I would always be afraid, and I would speak gibberish. Gibberish means that in my mind, I thought I was speaking, but when people heard, they said that it didn't make any sense. Also, the seizures would anyway last from 1.5 to 2 minutes, the longest 2 minutes of my life. When I recovered, I was exhausted. I would usually go sleep, and it would take me anyway for 1.5 days, sometimes 2 days to recover. And then I would usually get on an average about once a month. However, nervousness or sicknesses can trigger more of those seizures. Now, the temporal lobe, this is what it is. I specifically had mine on the left temporal lobe, and these are the different features that come from those temporal lobes over there. Specifically for me was memory and speech. Now, and it came to finding a recovery, a source, a cure. We tried a bunch of things. We tried both conventional, which is medicine and appointments. We also tried homeopathic medicine. Nothing helped that. We did a lot of medical tests. In fact, I have lost count as a kid how many EEGs and how many MRIs that I've gone through over there. All said and done, I was basically told that a cure just wasn't available. So they focused on what are the triggers. And in my case, it was allergies. And back then, I lived in a country where cleanliness wasn't a priority. So dust allergies really were hard to maintain. Basically, in short, I was told that having seizures is a new normal for me. However, that did not stop me from living a normal life. Like I said, I was a normal kid growing up over there. This was me in school. I enjoyed my school. I went through all the grades. I never let that hinder me. I enjoyed to travel. I had such great memories of my traveling over there. But, all said and done, even though I was a kid growing up, with this seizure, I had some tough days. There were days when I would be... I'd get seizures, and I'll never forget that at this one time I was preparing for a test, and I had a seizure that morning just because of the concern that I had, the nervousness that I had, and I actually failed the test. But we did go ahead and speak to the classroom instructor over there, and they completely understood that, and they said, "Hey, you can retake the test." And I did really well. I mean, I retook the test over there. Medications drained me. I mean, there were days with the medications that I was on, I had to get on an average 9 to 10 hours of sleep. And when I'd get up, I'd be drowsy. I had difficulty focusing. And in short, it took me twice the amount of work and effort to do what a normal person would do just to learn something. But you know what? When I had those good days, in the good days, I made the most of it. I enjoyed playing soccer, and I actually got pretty good at it. But on the days which were bad, I played with a lot of Lego, and I got good at it too. So I made the most of it. But one of the things it did was it forced me to mature quickly, to take care of myself, to be aware of my surroundings, aware of the people. it really forced me to take care of myself. And these were all very important lessons that I had to learn at a very early age over there. So chapter 2 about the new beginning in my life, that is when in 1999 my family immigrated to the United States. And here initially we just had to settle down. We had to get to our new normal. But once we did, we definitely pursued to find a cure again. And we exhausted all the options that were available, specifically in Texas and in Kansas, because those were the two states I lived in over there. Again, went through countless tests over there, MRI scans, EEGs. And over there, I was basically told the same thing, is that once again, a cure is not available. And just to emphasize on that, the type of seizure that I had was very specific. They couldn't identify it. They said that, hey, your seizures sound like one, but they're not the norm. They're not brains getting agitated or aggressive. Something's happening. It feels like these type of regular seizures, but it's not. So we're going to give you these medications and you just have to live with it for the rest of the life. But not all the visits were useless. They actually switched me to a different type of medication, and it did help a little bit. Like the tiredness went away, but it didn't stop that. Now, one of the things was when I was growing up, when I was in college, I basically said that if there was not a cure available for me, I'm going to pursue that cure. So what I did was I double majored. I did my bachelor in science and computer engineering, and I did a pre-med. And along with all of that came math, science, chemistry, and biology. I had 4 minors over there. My goal was to pursue medicine to find myself. But I'll never forget that first day of college. I was undergrad. I went to Wichita State University. And there I was sitting in the hallway waiting for my first class. And I was nervous. And guess what happened? I had a seizure. It wasn't a grand mal, but everybody noticed it. So here I am, first day of college, a young adult. And I was embarrassed. But you know what? That was life for me. So I basically came back to school the next day for my class, and I made some really good friends in the process. People who saw me for me, not for my illness, and we were good friends for the entire collegehood life over there. Now, I was pursuing to be medicine, but because of my GPAs was lower, even though I took the medical college admissions test twice, scored above the national average, my GPA in engineering was just not high enough. So God definitely had other plans for me. But as I was growing up, I just had a better understanding of my seizures. So what I did was I just made sure I had very little stress and as less anxiety as possible. So I stayed on top of all my school stuff, all the schoolwork that I had to submit, like homework, prepped ahead of time for the tests. Never did any last minute stuff because that could cause me anxiety. That could cause me nervousness. And so I just took good care of myself over there. Illness kept me away from temptations too. And that's such a blessing because I was already on 3 medications, 2 for allergies, 2 for seizures, 1 for allergies. Hence, I really had no interest in any recreational drugs or alcohol. I was just too smart than that. I just said that no, I'm not going to let that get into my body because I'm already having enough medication over there. Finally, all said and done, when it came to college, basically I had to work my way through college because when I first came to this country, I started seeing credit debt. And I'm like, I am not going to do that to me when I have a fresh start in this country. So I worked my way through college, and I had to be very extra careful because I would get tired too and things like that. So I actually started college a year later. The first year I just worked. I worked full time, and I started saving up some money. And when I went into college, I was able to actually work my way entire through college without taking a single loan. During summertime, I worked full time. During college days, I would still take a full class, full semester, but I still worked 30 hours over there. And at the same time, I had to be very careful of my health. So I was a very busy boy during those 5 years of college over there. But what it did was that it actually helped me mature at a very faster age. Now, chapter 3, which was got married and found a cure. June 2006 was a big month of my life and a big year of my life. I actually found the love of my life over there. I met my wife, at that time her name was Rosanna Alice Fogel. She accepted me the way I was. And I'll never forget that when we got serious in our dating, I had gone fishing with her dad and she was there. And I had a seizure that day. And when I recovered and I was back to normal, we just continued fishing like nothing happened. That to me was a big sign that she is the one that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. Other thing is Rosanna pursued nursing. And when we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina in 2008, she joined the Carolina Medical Center Rehabilitation. Now CMC is actually called Atrium. And there she learned a lot about the epilepsy department. And we learned about Dr. Bruce Mace, who was the head of the epilepsy department. So once again, we pursued to find a cure for seizure. And remember, this is the third attempt now. But after a few visits with Dr. Bruce Mace, he said, Daniel, I really have a good understanding of this, and I'd like you to pursue surgery. And he said that there's a bunch of tests that I have to do, and we have to see if I'm a candidate for that. And so we went through a whole bunch of tests, and I'll never forget these two tests. One of them was WADA, W-A-D-A. In the WADA test, they actually, what you want to do is determine which side of your brain is the most dominant one. So they actually put you, it's a very fast test. The whole test finishes in 20 minutes. The first section is they put one half of your brain to sleep, and they ask you a bunch of questions. And then the next phase of the test, they put the other half of your brain to sleep, and they ask you the same questions, and that's how they determine which is your dominant side. The other thing was called as a Fmri. It's actually an MRI, which is they're seeing active live activity in your brain. That time they would talk to me and ask questions. But with the combination of these two tests, they were able to very confidently identify where these seizures came from. And that's when they found out a very important thing. They found out that it was not actually a brain which was malfunctioning. It was actually a problem, physical problem in the brain over there. And so we went ahead and opted for that. Just to be on, to tell you that right there, mine was on the left side. If you can see over there in the skull, there was actually a section in my skull where there was a dip. The skull actually had not formed properly. There was a dip, and a section of the brain had seeped into it. And that irritation is what caused seizures. So the whole plan for surgery was to first take out that section of the brain because it's already malfunctioning, and to fill that gap up with just taking little areas from other section of the skull. Now, this was all happening, and my wife was 2 months pregnant at that time. But we were at such peace about this. We prayed together, and we were at peace about this. So with my wife 2 months pregnant, I'll never forget this. This was on May 10th. I checked in for my two-phase surgery. Now, phase one is they would definitely cut the skull up, get into the brain over there, and they put the electrodes on the brain to get more detailed information. And it stayed that way for 5 days. I have no recollection of those 5 days whatsoever, but I've been told that I was saying things all about technology and stuff like that. When something says I am racking servers in a data center, stuff like that, I have no recollection of that. But on the 6th day, they took out the electrodes. They found exactly the root cause of the problem, and they took that out. Now, I gotta be mindful. The doctors usually take out more just to be on the safe side, but my neurologist and my surgeon said that, Daniel, you are actually way too normal for an epilepsy patient. You've gone through entire schooling. Like parents usually hold their kids back to be extra protective. My parents did not. They just let me be a normal kid. And they said that, so that's why we did not take out a lot, because that can affect your speech, thinking, memory. So we just took out the worst section, and we'll see what happens after that. So they took out what they had to, but here's how much they took out. This is the size of a large egg, all right? This is how much they took out. 2/3 of an egg is that much how much brain capacity they took out over there. And here I am standing talking in front of you. Now, all said and done though, after the surgery, things were not perfect, all right? I had to go through speech therapy because if you remember, that section of the brain does control speech. And my speech therapy was very interesting because what was happening to me was I could talk about something. I could say that is recording me. I can take pictures with it. It is fantastic. It's high definition, but I could not tell you that it's a camera. That name camera would not come to my mind. So I had to go through this therapy, which is literally rewiring my brain for the way I think. I had to rewire my brain to think again, and for my thoughts to come back to my memory over there, connect to my memory. And the anticipated amount of time for this type of healing and therapy would actually be 8 to 9 months, but I was done in 6 weeks. I mean, in 8 to 9 weeks, I was done in 6 weeks. They said that they tested me before, they tested me in between, after. It says, Daniel, you're almost back to normal over there. We also changed medications. We actually changed medications and we lowered the quantity. And then a couple of things happened. I actually first went through my first month without any seizures. And then we finally were able to tweak the exact amount of my medication. And I went through a few more months without seizures, and I got my driver's license back over there. And then something happened. Gabriel was born on November 19th, 2010, over 6 months after I had the full surgery. And trust me when I say, all of those who have parents over there, when the baby comes along, there's new experiences, and one of them is sleepless nights. Now remember, I'm the kind of guy who would need anywhere from 8 to 9 hours of sleep, and if I didn't, that would sometimes trigger a seizure. But with having a new baby and we were getting used to it, we had some sleepless nights, and I didn't get a single surgery over there. And to me, that was just an answer to a very simple prayer I was praying this for as long as I can remember. I said that I have a simple request that let my children not see me have a seizure, and he answered that prayer. All right, so let's answer this one question which all of you are seeing, and I haven't mentioned is, okay, what are you doing with an EEG right now? Because we definitely see electrodes on your head. Just so you know, there's actually 24 electrodes on my head, and I'm fine. Don't worry about that. In fact, you can see that they're all put in specific places around. This is a mandatory requirement that is needed, and I usually see my doctor once a year. But here's some great news that happened. I was actually had an appointment with my doctor, and she said that when they do the lab results, one of the medications that I take was called Keppra, and in that Keppra, she said that she could not find any levels of Keppra in me in my lab lab environment, in my blood test that was done. So she said that we should seriously consider taking you off that, and one of the requirements is to do an EEG over there. So this is definitely an exciting time for me because you're finally weaning me off that one medication as well. All right, so where does MVP fit into all of this? What does all this have to do with becoming an MVP? Well, that's a great question. So one of the things that, remember, when as I was walking past my history over there, when I had seizures, I had to do a few things. I took a lot of notes because what would happen is I want to make sure I don't forget it. I would be connecting, I mean, learning something, and say, if God forbid, I would have a seizure, I would forget all of that. So my notes had to be so good that if I've learned something and say if I've forgotten about it or I lost knowledge about that, I should be able to read my notes and bring me back to right where I was, just in case if I forgot with had a seizure. The other thing was I had to work twice as hard to learn something because the medications would wear me down, seizures, things like that. So I was very hardworking and just twice as hard just to be normal. That was my nature over there. I made the most of my good days. Like I said back when I was talking about soccer and Legos, I would have some good days and I would have some bad days, and I would make the most of my good days because bad days would slow me down. Other thing is, other people's disabilities never affected me, and I never even noticed it because I'm a guy with a disability. And so I treated everyone the exact same. I never had any kind of differentiation. I didn't show that type of sympathy. I just said that, hey, I understand you have a problem. Let's deal with it, move forward. All right. And so I never gave up, because if I learned something and potentially with a seizure I forgot it, well, not a problem. Let me go and learn it again. Let me never give up. So keeping these things in mind, when it comes to taking a lot of notes so I won't forget it, I became really good at blogging because I was able to take a topic and I blogged on it, and I blogged it so well that whoever is learning can actually learn it the first time. That's how detailed I would blog over there. When it came to having to work twice as hard to learn something, I continued to work twice as hard. But now I didn't have to learn something all over again. So I was able to learn more. I was able to learn faster. And I continue to this day put in that extra time and effort to just learn. And that all came from a sickness, an illness that I had. I still make the most of my days. In fact, now I don't have bad days, but I still make every day count because every day matters over there. When it comes to other people's and their disabilities, I make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to learn, especially when I do workshops or when I'm blogging. It is something that I do out of my passion. I want to make sure that everybody is able to understand that topic. And sure, some people, we all adopt at different levels. Well, I helped everyone over there. And then when it came to never giving up, I just won't stop until I've learned something good enough to teach. Again, for the same sake, is that if I've learned something, I want to make sure I teach someone over there. So when it came to the path for MVP, what I started doing was I actually was already blogging at that time, but I also started speaking, and I started small. I started speaking at user groups and some larger free events like SharePoint Saturdays over there. Then I started getting invited to some paid events, and by that time I was more regular in my blogging, and I was doing a lot more video blogs at that time over there. I also started volunteering at local user groups, at running events, and And then people noticed that, and actually I got nominated to be an MVP by 2 people. And that's when I actually started even understanding the true meaning of MVP. I'd heard about it, never really paid too much attention to it. But then that's when I understood the true meaning of MVP over there. And then just as a side note, I never meant to be an MVP. Everything I did was for the people, to help them, because that was my passion now. That's what I came from. So, back in 2016, I became an MVP for the business solutions over there. So I do want to leave you with a few comments. One thing is, never give up finding a cure. I started having seizures at the age of 3. My surgery, the cure which I had, was 29. So I had seizures for 26 years. I never gave up. And I ask you, don't give up. Also, don't let yours or someone else's limitations stop you. I had limitations. I had seizures. I had sickness. I had tired. But that never stopped me from pursuing my education, pursuing my career. It never stopped me over there. And in your case, if it is your career, then let that not stop you either. And if you now have a current employer that doesn't provide you the flexibility, then maybe it's time to find a new job, because don't let someone else's limitations stop you for that. Also, don't have ulterior motives. And I do want to spend a little bit of time on this, is that when it comes to serving the community, do it with passion and not with ulterior motives. Don't do it saying that, oh, I'm going to blog, I'm going to answer in the forums, and so all of this I can submit that in and I become an MVP. That should not be your reason to become an MVP. Do it with a generous heart, do it with a passion, and I can promise you that the MVP is just a byproduct. People will notice your hard work and your perseverance for that. But let that not be your main reason. And finally, like I said, hard work and perseverance always pays off. And always remember this, is that the knowledge that you've earned, no one can steal that. And you will, that's something that you can pass along to other people. That knowledge is always permanent over there. So I want to thank you for watching this video. Hopefully it has been a source of inspiration and motivation to fight whatever illnesses that you are having, no matter what it is. Hopefully this has been that source of inspiration over there. And once again, thanks for stopping by, and here's the end of my life's true story, from epilepsy to MVP.